Hello, my dear friends. How have you been? I'm Arith Härger, and here I am today to make another book review. I kind of like making this. I'm getting the hang of it, I think. I hope. Now, today I'm going to review this little fellow right here, the Book of Rune Secrets by Tyriel. And I'll try to be quick about it, so I won't take much of your time. Because, well, I tend to get a little bit excited when I like something, and then it's hard to shut up. Not in real life, though. I'm actually very shy and absolutely quiet. But I'm not here to talk about myself, obviously. Now, the Book of Rune Secrets. I am glad I read this one, and in truth, it's a shame I wasn't aware of this book sooner. It would have proven to be, I think, a little bit useful for my own rune series in this channel. Alas, I came to the knowledge of the existence of this book too late on that account, but obviously never too late to learn a thing or two and check someone else's perspectives on the runes. So, here's what you need to take in mind first concerning this book. So, of course, this is not the sort of book you will want to use or consult when making a thorough work of investigation on the field of human social sciences concerning the history of the runes. This is the author's own perspectives of the runes. This is something quite individual and to a certain extent unique. A personal interpretation of the runes, which I may say it's quite refreshing actually. This is a secular approach to the runes. And what do I mean by this? Well, it's for a secular type of readers, with no religious or spiritual basis, as you know it. Therefore, there isn't really a biased approach from that point of view, and only focused on an interpretation of the runes, the author's own theory, as I've said, and it fits into our modern lives and the world we live in right now. So I find this refreshing for several reasons. First, I'm sick and tired of books with an extreme esoteric view on the runes that follow Guido von List's ideas. Allow me to be blunt in here. Guido von List, as you know it, was the first one to come up with an esoteric idea of the runes, and his esoteric approach to the runes was wrong back then. It is wrong right now after hundreds of thousands of new studies on the runes. And let me explain in a few words why I think it was wrong. Let's not forget that we are living in the 21st century, in 2020, from the moment this video came out anyway. People who still cling on to those esoteric approaches to the runes are not really interested in knowing the runes. I am really sick and tired of people, of authors who still follow those ideas concerning the runes and keep on giving a bad name to them and to actual runologists. Perpetuating ignorance leads nowhere. Guido von List conceived the idea of an esoteric Armanen level understanding of the runes and combined this with a lot of Volkische ideas. Folkism. Folkish ideas in his Das Geheimnis der Runen in 1908. So several racist ideas and ideologies of a political nationalist radicalism background. After that, several Guido von List societies existed or sprouted or developed in Germany in the early 900s. And these developed practical techniques to reach an Armanen level understanding of the runes. This approach was a folkism. As I've said, these ideas derive precisely from the Germanic ethno-nationalist movement, populist or nationalist movement, and typically racist, highly racist, extremely racist. Folkisms do not focus on the pagan past. They focus on romantic nationalist ideas of the 19th century and early 20th century, first half of the 20th century. It's a romantic and racial racist neo-paganism, which sprouts from the fascination for nature and the ideas of nation and race. There's plenty of new and better information on the runes nowadays, even esoterically speaking. No need to cling on to that anymore. But unfortunately, many people, many authors still cling on to those obsolete ideas, and it has been quite popular among the Azothru and Odinist religious organizations of the 70s, which led to many books on the runes that still continue to express ideas of the runes highly corrupted by politics, traditional radicalisms, and extremisms, and religious fanaticisms, such as the works of Edward Thorson or Stephen Flowers, the same guy. I've made a video about it, and indeed, I take the opportunity and urge you to watch that if you have the time, of course. Watch that one for a better understanding of this panorama and what I'm saying in here. Anyway, this is without a doubt the main reason why I have enjoyed this book right here, and why I find it to be quite refreshing, this secular approach precisely to the runes and adapting them to our modern reality. Because many people seem to forget that paganism is about evolution. It is a constant development and the ability to adapt to new realities. As much as we might like the perspectives we have of the past, we are not going that way. We are not turning back. The way is forward always, and we are moving forward, and we must adapt to our realities so we can enjoy the life we have and not wasting time, and indeed not wasting away the gift of being alive. So it is refreshing to see this unbiased approach, even if it's the author's own theory, of course, but at least the author of this book doesn't cling on to the same old ideas. Of course, I do not agree 100% with the contents of this book. Obviously, that's just impossible. There's nothing and no one in this world I can agree 100% with. That's just impossible, and I'm sure you agree with me. I cannot take someone else's words at face value and agree to everything without questioning it. Still, I enjoyed this book, and I think it's worth the reading, even if it's only to be aware of someone else's perspectives and ideas, which is always good. It is always positive to be aware of someone else's views so we won't close ourselves in our own bubbles. There's always something to learn, and there's always a perspective that we might miss, and it's good to come to the realization that, well, after all, there's another way to see the world. Now, this is not a huge book, as you can see. It's about 2 or 3 pages for each rune, fairly easy to read and to accompany the line of thought of the author. I would say it takes perhaps between 48 to 70 minutes to read the whole book, so don't expect something quite heavy and very elaborate. It's a theory and a personal perception, and as I've said, I think it's a very refreshing perspective on several aspects, and good to apply to our modern world and our modern lives. I think the author only fails in not giving a short historical understanding of the runes, so people might be a lot more aware that what he is writing in here isn't indeed focused on surviving documentary ideas or evidences of the runes. I think it would prove to be useful just a couple of words explaining at least the Elder Futhark, that rune row, because there are still many people that need to interiorize that concerning the Elder Futhark. Historically speaking, of course, we know close to nothing. That's true. Also, since this is a book for secular people, as the author himself explains, actually, some people might be a little bit mad, perhaps, because there's still this belief that we should not separate the runes from heathenry, and it's something exclusive from Northern Europe, which is not, as you know it, or only Northern Europeans are allowed to use them or have the privilege to use them, and everybody else is being quite disrespectful, which isn't true at all. If it were true, no one in the world should use the Latin alphabet if we follow that same line of thought. Certainly, without a doubt, it was the Northern European peoples that continued to use the runes for a long period until quite recently, actually, and maintained those as writing systems until quite late, even with the introduction and after the introduction of the Latin alphabet. No one is saying otherwise. No one is disputing that. But it is important to remember that runic symbols were introduced to the Germanic peoples by the Romans in the 2nd century of the Common Era. And the Romans themselves got it from the Etruscans during the Iron Age of the Italian peninsula. And I'm not going to get into details, don't worry, but runic symbols were already being used in prehistoric times. And we have wonderful examples from many places. One of such places, the oldest places we can find is actually in what is nowadays northern Portugal, dating to the late Neolithic, 6,000 years ago. And other such examples, even earlier ones, from the Stone Age of the Western Iberian Atlantic. So perhaps it would have been useful to mention just a little bit of that, just so people can understand that this secular approach to the runes isn't something outrageous, since runic symbols existed and were being used as expressions of the human mind since before we had notions of cultural groups of a certain people, or since before the notions of Germanic, Roman, Etruscan, Lusitanian peoples, and so on and so forth, and way before the artificial boundaries that constitute modern countries even existed or were concocted. A Norwegian cannot say that the runic symbols are Norwegian. A Portuguese cannot say that the runic symbols are Portuguese. An Italian cannot say that the runic symbols are Italian, because the runes already existed before any notions of country, before artificial boundaries, and any modern beliefs concerning past cultures and their supposed territories. So this secular approach in this book isn't that all unreasonable. But well, even though this book doesn't deal with the cultural significance of the runes and their roots, for a better introduction or understanding of this thing, I still believe it is quite the refreshing theory and certainly a useful perspective for the modern world, our modern world. No one should obviously totally embrace and live by it, of course, but yet another useful perspective to add to other perspectives you may have, and we keep on going and learning and trying to live our lives as best as we can. As I said, this is not a book for students and professors that study the history of the runes. This is not at all something scientific, not academic. So if you bear that in mind, you will better enter and accompany the perception of the author. Is it a modernization of the runes? Yes, certainly. But it's up to you to know how to distinguish and eventually learn and separate the historical from the esoteric, or the historical from the modern psychology brought into the runes, which, as I've said, obviously such perceptions were not attached to the runes in the past, in the actual historical past. Especially speaking of the Elder Futhark, of which we actually know close to nothing, even historically speaking. So, let alone any ideas of the social life attached to these symbols or esoteric notions. We know more about younger versions or younger rune rows that came after during the Middle Ages. Now, in the appendix of the book, there is a particular strange approach to the idea and use of the Volknut, quite the modernized idea, of course. I'm not going into details concerning that because, indeed, there's little we know about the symbol, the Volknut. There's little we know for sure. Whose name we don't even know what it actually was during the Viking period, or any period after. And the term Volknut is a modern use to designate a symbol whose name, if it ever had any, was completely lost to us. There are many conclusions we can come up with in relation to the Volknut and other symbols and their use. I've made several videos concerning that, the Volknut, and I'll put 2 of them at least by the end of this video if anyone is interested. But several conclusions from the studies we can make of the archaeological contexts and the artistic developments and the historical periods and the contexts the symbol, the Volknut, has been inserted in, which isn't just funerary context as many still believe. So, the final pages of the book and the whole idea on the Volknut is something I really didn't like, and I'm not at all inclined to esoteric and modern psychology approaches to symbols that, historically speaking, we know little or close to nothing. So there's really no point in making all sorts of assumptions based purely on personal ideas and escape completely from the scientific work. We can make assumptions and even come up with a theory, of course, if we can reinforce that theory with evidences and explain why based on scientific study and the study of the sources, which in the case of this symbol, the Volknut, are 99% archaeological sources. Any theory is welcomed, of course, if we present evidences and not simply throwing away ideas and that's it, take it or leave it. But apart from that, I have enjoyed the part on the approach to each of the runes, which is almost the entire book. And on that account, I think it's worth the reading. So it's quite positive, I think. I would give 3 stars out of 5. All right, my dear friends, I hope you have enjoyed yet another book review. I hope it was useful. Tell me if you want to see more of these videos in the future. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next video. And as always, don't put it on. Thanks for today.